I never intended to make a particular political statement about this. I kept it very quiet. I didn't talk about guns online. I didn't post pictures of my weapons online. But once this happened, and I was lucky enough to get a good legal team, we all saw this the same way as a civil rights issue. And we all understood that the state of New York has no more right to tell me that I may not keep and bear arms than it has to tell me I have to sit in the back of the bus or to tell me to come in by the colored entrance.
All right. I'm Chris Kuper. I'm a federal liaison for National Association for Gun Rights, and my guest today is Dexter Taylor. So, Dexter, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Thanks, brother. Well, my name is Dexter Taylor. I'm a veteran of the software industry. I've been a software developer for almost 30 years. I'm a musician. I'm a father. I'm a neighbor. I'm a tinkerer. I have a machine shop in my basement. And the state of New York, where I live, thinks that I'm a violent felon.
Okay, that's probably the most exciting part. So why don't you go into why the state of New York, besides you being a rational person, why they think that you're a threat to society?
Well, a couple of years ago, I became interested in the firearms community, making weapons specifically. For some reason, some videos started to show up in my feed featuring people making their own firearms from what we call 80% receivers. So these people would buy these parts, these legal gun parts online, and they would finish them in their workshops. They'd, drill holes and machine out the whatever necessary fire control pockets there were, and they'd have a finished weapon once they added parts. And I just became fascinated by it. And so I started doing the same thing. I started off with Glock-style pistols and made a few of those. And then I moved on to rifles, and I made I think 8 rifles in all. Let's see if I can remember their names. Alpha, Switchblade, Ranger, Wildcat, Scarab, Epic, Diana, and Mars. Those are my babies. And
that's how you know you're a nerd.
That's how you know you're a nerd. It's true. Guilty as charged. So
You named them Neptune and Pluto and Mars.
don't start. So and then the other thing that happened was right away the software geek side of my mind started thinking about, well, how can I incorporate my software skills into weapons science? So I started developing ideas for dry fire training programs, how I could use kind of software and hardware to improve those, how I could use low-cost scanners to improve quality control at the desktop for the hand-loading community, people who make their own ammunition, and how I could use software and some mathematics to develop better models for tuning rifles, and that was a cyclic energy flow, that whole pattern. So I was really into it and doing all the stuff, and then in April of 2022, I was raided by a SWAT team, which included some friends from the ATF, and they informed me they were here for me. They ransacked my house, took all my weapons and many of my tools, and took me off to Rikers, where I spent a week as a guest of New York City.
Sheesh. That's
That's what
now,
I
did you
said.
did you get the full treatment, the whole no knock, open door, flashlights, first thing in the morning sort of thing?
Oh, that's what happened. I mean, I'd gone to bed. It was funny. I'd gone to sleep the previous night listening to an audiobook. And so I woke up, I think it was like around 6 in the morning. And I started hearing, I heard some voices that were not the audiobook. Then I heard a big bang, and I heard that distinctive kind of SWAT team vocal cadence, and and then I saw weapon lights moving back and forth under the door of my bedroom, and then I realized, this is serious. So, and what's funny, the first thing I called out, I said, "Hey, good morning, guys. My name is Dexter Taylor. I live here. Who are you looking for?" And they said, "We're here for you." And I said, "Okay, well, how about we all conduct ourselves like gentlemen and, and play it like that?" So, I got arrested like a professional, and they to their credit, they were professional as well. But yeah, the state of New York decided that that's what needed to happen. So
Now, what are the charges and what are you facing?
the charges are felony weapons possession, multiple counts because I made multiple weapons, and in total, if I lose my case, I'm looking at about 18 years in prison.
That's quite some time.
It's quite some time. I should add, by the way, that that not only am I a law-abiding, not only am I a law-abiding citizen, I have a squeaky clean criminal record. I was a member in good standing of my local gun range, the West Side Pistol and Rifle Range in Manhattan, and so I obviously cleared that background check at the time I was raided. So this is, in my opinion, this is a matter of kind of ideology over law. In my opinion, the Supreme Court, well, first of all, the Constitution is very clear, but also the Supreme Court was even clearer especially when the Bruin ruling got handed down. All these states were put on notice that they could no longer ignore the highest law of the land. And some states, like my home of New York, chose to disregard that and kind of make up their own law as they go. And so that's kind of what's happening here. I never intended to make a particular political statement about this. I kept it very quiet. I didn't talk about guns online. I didn't post pictures of my weapons online. But once this happened, and I was lucky enough to get a good legal team, we all saw this the same way as a civil rights issue. And we all understood that the state of New York has no more right to tell me that I may not keep and bear arms than it has to tell me I have to sit in the back of the bus or to tell me to come in by the colored entrance, right? The state of New York has exceeded its authority. Now, I can't do anything about that. I can't compel them to obey the law. What I can do is be an embarrassment. And so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me as odd, when you look at the normal day-to-day stuff that goes on in New York City. They have a very, very failed gun control policy.
Correct.
Or gun policy in general. And so you see a lot of catch and release. You see a lot of slap on the wrist stuff. It's weird to see someone like you who's doesn't fit the bill, who's getting such an egregious... I mean, it's got to be just for what? Just for the amount of firearms? It's not for actions you did. It's not for any crime you've committed. It's just simply the ownership of certain pieces
That's
of
correct.
metal and
That's
plastic.
correct. Yeah.
Does it strike you as odd that there is this culture in a lot of these large cities where there doesn't seem to be an incredible amount of enforcement on actually apprehending the criminals, but yet there seems to be a lot of soft targets. And then at the same time, it's, hey, we have gun violence, so no one can own guns. And then as soon as you try to protect yourself, it's, no, not like that. So your options are either that you can be defenseless, or if they catch you, then you get to go to prison where you're surrounded by criminals.
That's right.
It's a catch-22.
It's funny you mention that because in many cities, and New York is one of them, we've gone down this weird path of destroying the art of policing by turning it into a stats game, right? And we did that here in New York City. When I was a kid coming up, policemen used to walk a beat. They used to patrol a patch. So at the very least, bias or not, they understood the people they were policing because they were part of the community. And this is what policing was supposed to be. When Robert Peel wrote his manifesto, that's what he was talking about. Now, so we've stepped away from that. And as a result, we've diminished the ability of police departments to be effective investigators. And so to your point, the soft targets, the law-abiding citizens, well, we're easy to go after, right? You don't have to, how did they get my name? Well, the ATF has a program where they go around and talk to parts manufacturers and say, give us your customer records or else, right? And then they get the records and then they go say, okay, New York NYPD, go pick these guys up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm pretty intimately familiar with that process. I mean, we've got a case going on right now where we're suing the ATF over forced reset triggers. We had a company reach out to us If you don't know what force reset triggers are, I know you do, but if you're listening to this and you don't, go back and watch the video on it. But they went after the owner, the inventor. They seized everything he had, even though it didn't meet the definition of what they said it was, which was a fully automatic machine gun. It's not. And then from there, they went to the USPS and said, hey, anybody that they've sent a package to, give us their names. And they did, and they just started, going up people's houses and intimidating them. I saw a report out of AmmoLand a couple days ago where the NYPD had put together this internal memo on, ghost guns, 80%. And they were showing where you could find them, what the pieces you need, what type of CNC stuff you'd use, whatever. And so they were going out to and monitoring the purchase and sellers of this. And instead of going after the sellers, they went after the soft targets. They went to eBay and said, hey, give us all the names of the people that have purchased these products. And then with their friends, the ATF started doing the exact same thing that happened to you. We've noticed over the past several years through the Biden administration, and it's not that the ATF has ever been good, it's just getting pernicious in the way that it's being used now. I think it's going after a lot of those easy targets a lot more. And to your point, getting those stats up. You've seen a lot of FFLs have been gone after off of not like malicious sales or illegal sales, but just bad paperwork or a mistake, and they're taking FFL's licenses away, and they're going after people. So it's a little wild. I do have a question for you because I know it's gonna come up. So you have this passion, you have this hobby. You and I both believe you have a constitutional right to do this, and particularly under Bruin, I think it's very, very clear. However, you do live in a city inside of a state that is pretty hostile to this. What would you say to somebody that said, hey, you should have moved out of this state? Like, you should have ceded territory. You should have just left and gone to a place where they're not going to come after you so hard.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, what would I say to that person? I mean, I'd say the U.S. Constitution applies in all 50 states. That's what I'd say. And I'd say that New York is my home. It's where I grew up. I certainly had plans to buy a piece of land somewhere, maybe in New Hampshire, and kind of build a gun lab and a gun range. Mainly because there are a lot of people who are doing cool stuff with weapons design in New Hampshire. But no, I don't think that we get out of this by deciding to move from one state to another. This is the United States of America. This is our republic. This is our home, right? And conservatives especially should know better. They should know that connections to home are important, and that standing up for what's right is important, right? So, again, I wouldn't put myself in the same category as any of our civil rights greats, but you could have said the same thing to anyone who decided to do kind of normal stuff that's protected under the laws of this land. Eating, why did you think you could just buy a sandwich at that lunch counter and sit and eat it? What's the matter with you? Why didn't you just go somewhere else? Well, again, this is our home, okay? And we either defend it, and we either defend its principles, or we don't, right? And either we are a nation of laws or we are not, right? And again, the Constitution is very clear, and it applies in all 50 states.
I mean, hard to argue against that. At some point you do. At some point you can only run so far, and I think that's kind of the point. I know in my mind often I have to drive into D.C. I'm a lobbyist for National Association for Gun Rights, and oftentimes I've got kids and a family, and I think like, man, it'd be nice to just go live in the hills.
Right.
But the truth is, they'll get you eventually, right? I mean, at some point, you do need to draw a line around your home.
That's correct.
And around where you live.
That's correct.
So, I mean, big stones on you. I know that wasn't your point. I know that wasn't your intention to do that. But I know I had spoken to your lawyer previously, and he had told me that they actually gave you a plea bargain and you denied
Yes, sir.
it. Is that true?
Yes, sir. I was going to spend less than half the time I would have spent in prison. So in total, I'm looking at about 18 years. They offered me a plea deal where I'd only have to serve 8, and I turned them down flat. Didn't take very much thinking on my part. And at this point, I don't even think I'd be willing to plead to anything other than maybe a misdemeanor, like a paperwork violation. Because the fact is, again, this is, I never wanted to poke New York State in the eye. I wanted to stay home and mind my business and geek out on doing cool stuff, But at this point, we see this as a civil rights issue. That's how we see it. By the way, that's how my parents see it, because I told them the whole story, and they're on my side. That's how my neighbors see it. I told them when I came back from Rikers and my parents drove me home from the precinct where I got my stuff, I went around and told my neighbors what happened to me. They're all mad at the government. They understand where I'm coming from. This is our home. And I'm very sorry, but the government of our state or our city does not have the right to to decide arbitrarily which pieces of our national law they observe, and which pieces they don't. Our mayor, His Honor Eric Adams, has said that I think he said it in response to the Bruin ruling that this was, if we go by this, it's going to turn our streets into the wild, wild west. That's very funny to me because His Honor seems perfectly willing to welcome people into our home from the wild, wild east and the wild, wild south. Right. And no disrespect, people, God bless people who want to go somewhere else and make a life for themselves. But the fact is that, we live here. We're from here, okay? And I can't understand why the people who govern us see fit to behave in a lawless way toward those of us who actually are not a threat to civic order and are not running around shooting up the place and are not running around committing crimes. So again, I can't compel them to behave lawfully. I can't compel them to respect my rights as an American citizen and to give me the same protection under the law that I'd have if I lived in Texas or Tennessee, right? What I can do is become an embarrassment. So there we go.
Well, for your sake, I hope you're right. I mean, I want to keep this up. I want to see where where your case goes. I know you got a long road ahead of you. You got to go through all of the state stuff before you can get to federal. So, God bless you, and I hope things work out correctly. Again, I'll be in contact. I've enjoyed talking to you over the past month and getting to know you a bit better. If you had anything to say to other gun owners out there, obviously don't put yourself necessarily in danger, but if you had to give them a piece of advice on how to fight, what would you say?
That's a great question. I would expand it. Not just gun owners, anyone who's interested in constitutional rights, and not only the Second Amendment. I would say, remember that there are actually invisible multitudes. Okay, and I'm addressing this really to my fellow conservatives. Remember that. Yes, there are bad things happening in our cities, but there are also people like me in our cities, right? And we believe in the Constitution, we believe in the rule of law, we believe in civic order. And I think it'll behoove all of us, right, to not write off the cities, yeah? And not say, oh, well, those people got what's coming to them because they voted in such and such a way, right? And put us all in that same bucket. This is our home, and we will fight for it together, and we'll defend its principles together, or we'll lose it together. And that's it.
Amen. That's a great way to close it. Dexter, thank you for your time. I can't wait for our members to meet you and get to hear your story. And
Thanks,
I'll talk
brother.
to you
I really
soon.
appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.